Have you been dying to hear the other side of the story when it comes to BC's progressive green policies? Standing beside me is MLA John Rustad and leader of the Conservative Party of British Columbia to talk about just that.
Just about a year or two ago now, the new plant was built in Ontario, I think in the Ottawa area. This plant produces 40,000 tons of bug protein for human and animal consumption. 40,000 tons of bug, and there's a second plant that's now in the process of being built. This is what they think is the solution. And I can tell you, stopping cows from farting and belching is not going to change the weather. But I tell you what it will do. It'll destroy our quality of life. Limiting our ability to move around in the name of climate change just makes us vulnerable to more government control. It takes away our freedoms. And so that's why when I saw the trucker convoy, I thought about where we need to be and what they stood for and those values that they took across this country and the flag that was raised around the world. My hat's off to those people that took that initiative, because those are values that we need to fight for. We should not be expecting our kids to eat bugs. We should not be expecting our kids to not be able to afford a reasonable quality of life. We should not be expecting people in the world to be starving simply because we're trying to meet some sort of ideology.
All right, Mr. Rustad, good to see you on Rebel News again.
It's great to be able to be back on Rebel News. Good to see you again.
Now, you were just a keynote speaker at a conference we've covered extensively. It's called the Reclaiming Canada Conference, and it took place in Victoria between May 26th and 28th. And we've pulled you outside. You haven't even had dinner yet, so thanks again.
Well, it's my pleasure to be able to talk, particularly about things that I'm so passionate about.
And one of those things that you brought up was about sort of where the green agenda is taking us. So why don't we start with a recap for people about what you said about the policies that we're seeing and how you can't back them.
Sure. So, I mean, climate change is real, and we have an issue, and then we've got to figure out how we address that. But the policies that are in place, both the carbon tax and the idea of reducing nitrogen-based fertilizer, what is the actual outcome that will come from that? I mean, the carbon tax is going to drive up the cost of everything we have, whether it's food or whether it's clothing, whether it is, being able to move around, just even getting to appointments. It drives up the cost of everything we do, which is energy. And yet it's not going to achieve anything. It's not going to change the weather. It's not going to actually achieve any results. So what we're doing is we're driving people into poverty with no expected outcomes that are going to be positive. And that doesn't make sense to me. We shouldn't be focused on that. Same with reduction of nitrogen-based fertilizer. 40% of the world's food supply comes from using nitrogen-based fertilizer. So if we're talking about reducing or even eliminating that, we're talking about the potential for billions of people in the world to starve. And I'm sorry, in good conscience, I can't support policies that are going to be driving poverty and driving starvation. And that's what these policies are designed to do. We could be doing so much better as a province to address climate without having to compromise, quite frankly, our quality of life. How is it that a policy that is designed to drive people into poverty is the answer to changing the weather? How is it that a policy that is going to lead to scarcity of food, that's going to lead to higher food prices, and that's going to contribute to world starvation, how is that good policy for the people in this country that deal with climate? It makes no sense whatsoever.
And you're one of the only, if not the only, political voice in British Columbia saying that. In fact, in case you don't know, you were removed from the now BC United Party for a simple retweet of a tweet about the other side to the politically correct narrative in this area.
The number of people that died because of climate, because of freezing or hot or catastrophes, was a 99% reduction to what we have today. Yes, 100 times more is what it would have been back then, a century ago. And the reason why all of that change, all of that improvement, our quality of life, the huge advancements in medicine, The fact that we pay just a small fraction of our income just on food, that we are able to live in more challenging climates because we have heat. All of that has come because we've used fossil fuels. And there is no viable replacement at this stage. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking to do something more viable and having a realistic path towards it. But when we're saying that, we are going to stop using fossil fuels, 40% of the world's food supply comes from nitrogen-based fertilizer. Now, I think it's great to use organic and to do the best we can in terms of food and our food source, but we're talking about billions of people in the world starving to death because of a policy on climate change. I, for one, am not up for that. When we look at all the problems we have in British Columbia, whether it's our healthcare system, whether it is the need for more investment in terms of crime and policing and our court system, whether it is dealing with mental health, whether it is affordable housing, all of these things require money. We can't be taxing people into poverty to be able to solve these problems. We need new revenue streams to be able to meet this. We have an overabundance of natural gas. That natural gas can be liquefied and exported. And when you think about it, there's 1 billion people in the world today that do not have electricity. China is building 2 new coal-fired plants every week. We could be helping these other countries to a very significant extent. And so my thinking is, as a province, we actually need to refocus on that. I would actually like to see the province commit to a new LNG facility starting every 2 years for the next, to build out another 3 or 4 LNG facilities in this province, and take that revenue and reinvest it in the people in this province and then reinvest it in the services that we need so that we can alleviate the pressure of taxes on people and that that affordability issue while being able to address the needs that we have as a province. We actually almost seem to be embarrassed about it. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of resources. We have a tremendous amount of potential. We could be providing the quality of life in this province like none other. But we seem to be, embarrassed and afraid to do it. And I think, quite frankly, that we should just, like I say enough is enough and put a policy in place that is focused on people and for economic development.
So this is obviously what your party stands for, and there are 2 upcoming by-elections in BC. Tell us a little bit about whether or not you're running candidates in that and the dates.
Sure. So the by-elections were actually just dropped here on Saturday. In terms of the date of these elections will be June 24th. And for the first time in the Conservative Party of BC's history, we will actually be running candidates both in the Wandafuka Langford riding as well as in the Mount Pleasant riding in Vancouver. We've got great candidates that are coming forward that are going to be fighting hard for their ridings, fighting hard for their people, and not just parroting party lines like we see from all the other parties. Because that's what I believe democracy should be. It should be people standing up, fighting hard for their ridings, and being able to come together, obviously, to work together as a caucus to be able to move forward policies, but primarily for representing their riding. We've got great candidates that are running. This is going to be actually a very interesting election because, like I say, it's the first time in BC's history that there'll be Conservative Party of BC candidates in these 2 ridings, fighting for those values that we want to be able to represent British Columbia with. I asked them, I said, have you ever been involved in anything political before? And they said, no, we've never been involved in it. And I asked them, did you vote in the last election? And they said, no. To me, this is an awakening for a lot of people. 45%, close to half the people in this province and in this country don't vote. That means we're allowing the special interest groups to take control of the agenda, to drive our policies as a province. Because just a small percentage can now have a huge outsized weight in terms of what will happen in politics. And we need to change that.
Well, we'll keep you posted on how that by-election goes. MLA and leader of the Conservative Party of BC, John Rustad, and I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. If you appreciate this report and all of our coverage of the Reclaiming Canada conference, please consider chipping in to cover our expenses to get here. We had to take a very expensive ferry. By we, I mean myself and Alex, who's behind the camera. We also had to get an Airbnb to stay here, and all of that is expenses that we rely and hope that you will help us cover. So if you'd like to chip in a few bucks to do so, please go to rebelfieldreports.com and chip in what you can. We appreciate your support.